Look, I actually want to signal how you're all in on AI. We actually just saw, what was it, 2 weeks ago, you updated the market as to your financials using not you, but a generated AI version of you. What are you trying to signal here, that productivity can just be limitless?
I think it can, actually. I am of the opinion that AI can already do all of the jobs that we as humans do. It's just a question of how we apply it and use it. But I think also to some degree, this part of doing the CEO AI was because when I met Sam and talked to him first time about this, I said, look, a lot of jobs are going to be threatened. And what are the jobs that people like the least? It's lawyers, CEOs, and bankers. And I happen to be both CEO and banker. So I said, let's replace our jobs first, and AI is going to become more popular than if it replaces other jobs. So we're trying to play into that narrative.
I mean, you've already played into that narrative by articulating how many customer service reps ultimately you don't have to hire going forward. You seem pretty easygoing about AI replacing you, but how do your employees feel?
Well, I think what we've done internally hasn't been reported as widely. Is we stopped hiring about a year ago, so we were 4,500, now we're 3,500. We have a natural attrition as every tech company, so people stay about 5 years, so 20% leave every year. And by not hiring, we're simply shrinking, right? What we've said to our employees, though, is what's going to happen is the total salary cost of Klarna is going to shrink, but part of the gain of that is going to be seen in your paycheck. So we're going to give some of the improvements that the efficiency that AI provides by increasing the pace at which the salaries of our employees increases. And that's because of that message being very consistent for myself and management for the last year. People internally, Klarna, are just rallying to deploy as much efficiency AI as they can, because it just means it has direct implications on their equity and their cash compensation for working at Klarna.
So other than customer services, how else have you felt the benefits? Where in your talent stack has it really benefited?
No, it's across the board, really. You can use it for so many different use cases. I would say in our company by now, with the 3,500, I would say there's a core group of 200 people who have really learned how to apply it practically, to really deploy it to different purposes, for automation, improvements, generating images, generating videos, marketing material, running financial analysis, interpreting our customers' needs and demands, product development, Cursor for engineering. Like there's an endless right now opportunities to deploy it for moving faster, accelerate the business.
You filed confidentially with the SEC ahead of an IPO, so I'm not going to ask you to comment on that, but you have been steering us as to how much you've seen an increase in revenue. 23% your AI-generated self told us. But there's still a very small loss. Is it productivity gains that help you get to ultimately profitability too?
It will be part that, but it's also growth. I mean, we have a very healthy margin now in our US business. We have a very healthy margin in our European business. So as that continues to grow, that also obviously helps accelerate the profit making. And we're seeing a great uptick in buy now, pay later in the US. I think it was reported now during Black Friday and so forth that credit card sales were up like 11%, while buy now, pay later was up about 24-25%. So there's a major shift going on away from credit cards towards buy now, pay later in the US.
I mean, you're everywhere. When you click on a website and try to pay, when you're on Apple Pay, you're doing deals with WorldPay, for example. How much more is there to bring in the US?
It's amazing. I mean, there's like two things. Like first, the credit card industry is $1 trillion market opportunity, and we're still a tiny, tiny piece of that. But more importantly, in the US, there's $1.3 trillion of credit card debt. People pay $120 billion in interest this year. And we calculated that the consumers that have used Klarna by having interest-free payments have saved over $2 billion in the last few years by using Klarna instead of credit cards. So this business model is going to present a serious threat to incumbent banks and credit card companies because it is a more healthy alternative for consumers and drives credit at zero interest for them, right?
I'm sure they love that. I know that you felt that they've come for you in some way, but you're looking towards a new administration here in the United States. How supportive do you think they will be of? I know you've had some interesting takes on some of Trump's promises.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I thought it was interesting that as much as Trump has been talking about just deregulation, removing, there was one thing he said in the opposite direction, which was, in the campaigning, he said we should put an interest rate cap on credit card fees at 10%. And I think Bernie Sanders jumped on it and said, like, oh, we want to keep him accountable to that. That's a great thing. In a lot of European markets, there is a 20% cap, for example, on interest rate or even lower. Here in the US, the average interest rate on credit cards is 24%, so much higher than that. Now, I think that's what's interesting to me, but then he also announced recently that, if you invest $1 billion in the US, we can accelerate licensing and so forth. Klarna is a bank in Europe. We want to become a bank in the US. We want to speed up our money transmitting licenses applications. We are more than happy to take Trump's and actually do that $1 billion commitment to the US market because it is so large. We want to accelerate and we want to create real competition. You can cap interest rates. That's one potential way to get away from this tremendous cost to society that credit cards present. Or we can create more competition. And we're happy to come in and increase competition even more.
And I mean, we started on AI, we'll end on AI, because we have got, you know, the LinkedIn post, which actually was put out by your CMO, talking about how you were using this generative AI version of yourself to update us on your numbers. Do you think the regulation is there for generative AI as well in the US versus Europe? I mean, give us your take on you as a global company. There's you, but not you.
Exactly. Look, I think that the challenge is, unfortunately, that Europe has taken a different path, where they want to regulate before they know what to regulate. While in the US, we've had the preference of being, let it play out a little bit and see whether it needs to be regulated. I think in general, like, I'm not an anarchist. I think some rules are helpful, but in general, obviously, you want to give, and we need to make sure that the democratic world is ahead in development of AI from the non-democratic world. So it's very important that we continue supporting it and don't over-regulate it too early. There are a few simple things that one should do. A simple rule that we've suggested in Brussels is maybe it should be legally obliged that if you communicate with someone on the screen, at least you have to tell if it's an AI or a human. Like, there's a basic rules, and obviously people would fraud that anyway, and people can, but there's basic rules that we can apply that could kind of make common sense, that could make sense to pursue already. But other than that, I would be on the side of, like, please keep it, allow us to innovate and push the envelope and see what the technology can do before we jump into regulating.